So I wanted to demonstrate a nice, an interesting lick for the guitar or any instrument, but if it's nice on the guitar. This is based on tritone substitutions, one of our favorite things we like to do in jazz. So I'm going to take a simple progression and show you how I use this kind of cool triad-based tritone substitution lick on the guitar. So I'm going to start with a 2-5-1 progression in the key of F. So the 2 chord in the key of F is G minor, the 5 chord is C, and the 1 chord is F. So you come across that progression all the time in jazz, and musicians just kind of work out their ideas sort of in that environment of the 2-5-1. So in time, that progression would sound like this: G minor, C7, F. And we might improvise on that. So 2-5-1, G minor, C. So now one thing we like to do in jazz is when we get to that C chord, we like to substitute it for the tritone substitution. So a tritone is a chord that is a flat 5 from the chord you're on. So in the case of C, we get C, D, E, F, G, and then we flat that G, which is the 5th, and we get a G flat, or you might think of it as an F sharp. So and that becomes our tritone substitution. And from C, that's a dissonant sound, but when we're using it in a chord progression, it creates a nice resolution to the 1. So here is G minor to C to F, and then G minor to the G flat, which is the tritone substitution, to F. So we get this: G minor, C7 to F. Now with the tritone substitution, instead of the C, G minor, G flat 7 to F. So it kind of, it gives that nice little descending chromatic bass line. And so a lot of times what we can do is we can completely substitute the 5 chord for the tritone, or sometimes we can go from the 5 to the tritone to the 1. So we get this sound. Which is a nice sound. So in terms of improvising now, instead of just thinking of the 2 to the 5 to the 1, now we can think of the G minor to the tritone to the 1. And you can even, and since you can go from the C to the F sharp to the F, or the C to the G flat to the F, you could do that too when you're improvising. G minor, C. So that time I went from C to the F sharp or G flat arpeggio to the F. So you get those kind of sounds. So what I like to play around with is a lick that uses the triad of the tritone and the 5 chord to do a little fill. So if I'm in F again, I'm going to go G minor, C, or G flat to F. So that there's a G flat arpeggio, a major arpeggio. And then here's a C arpeggio. And then here's a G flat arpeggio, C arpeggio, G flat arpeggio. So you can kind of move that up the fretboard. Now I'm alternating between G flat major triad arpeggio and a C major arpeggio. So together that sounds like this. And then and depending on the timing of the chords, you can then resolve it right to F. So I might do something like this. Now with the chord and then the arpeggios, sounds like this. So we get that F, G flat, C, G flat, C, G flat, C, and then we're back to F. So it's a cool sounding arpeggio, and so you can play it ascending, descending. You can start sort of wherever you want, and you can move this around the neck of the guitar. So, for instance, if I was on, if I'm playing G minor, C to F, I might be up here doing something like this. So that was a C, G flat, C, G flat, F arpeggio. C. So you can descend. You can find all sorts of ways to go through those patterns, alternating those chords. So again, I can, as I'm playing through that progression, so again, that's a tritone substitution lick. And again, the shorthand, G flat arpeggio, G flat arpeggio, C arpeggio, G flat arpeggio, C arpeggio, G flat arpeggio, C arpeggio to F. So I hope that gives you some ideas of how you can incorporate tritone substitution in make your playing a little bit more interesting sounding.